You're listening to A World of Empowerment Service from Angel Rose and Ahonu.
Hi, you are very welcome back. I am Ahonu, and unfortunately Angel Rose is not with me today, but she is very much enthusiastic about what Aage Nost has to say. This is the second in the series with Aage, and we started last week where we were talking about his success principles and how billionaires think. And we are going into part 2 of that today, and we welcome Aage back again. Aage, what have you got for us today?
Hello, and I'm glad to be here. This is fun. I love doing these things.
Yeah, and we are blessed to have you, and we appreciate you and all of the knowledge that you bring to this. And might I just ask, Aage, if it's okay? We did put out a little bit of a notice so that people, to build up a little expectation of what it was that you were teaching. And some people have remarked that, oh, I don't want to be a billionaire, right? And I don't want to be a millionaire, but I do want money. So
Yeah.
There seems to be, and not only that, but also there seems to be a bit of a disparity between health and money and how our thinking all relates to all of this, you know? Could you just spend a moment maybe just clarifying that before you begin? Yeah.
I have had people tell me that too, that I don't want to be a billionaire. They're all crooks. No, they're not. But on the other hand, if you have this aversion against money, that is the reason why they're broke.
Right. Yes. Yeah. That's a subtle, interesting change in thinking. That's what I see that as.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it isn't just about money. When I talk about success, that means successful in family life, with your friends, with your play on Sunday afternoons. You can be successful at all kinds of things, but the underlying creative capability of that comes from money. If you had absolutely no money, you'd be homeless.
Right.
So don't get rid of that aversion against money, because money is not created with your hands. It's created in the mind, and I'm pointing to both the brain and the heart.
No, that's a beautiful point. We actually did a book study on World of Empowerment recently, and the book was called Busting Loose from the Money Game. And it wasn't actually about money at all. It was about how we create the whole scenario ourselves. What a brilliant creation that we've made. But interestingly, how we let it affect us. That was the key to the whole thing. How it creates problems for us, but we're creating the problems. Yeah.
Yes, that's good, because that's what, and one of the things that Nori Love talks about so very eloquently, and she explains it in so simple terms that everybody understands how law of attraction interacts with that.
We will be seeing Nori Love next week, right? She's coming on next
Yeah, she's got the third session here, I think.
Excellent. Okay. All right, let us begin.
Okay. What we did last time was partially nuts and bolts and some of the principles and the technique and so on. But I want to remind you a little bit. I want to overlap a little bit, because remember that question I asked you last time, the one that, what would you start tomorrow morning if you knew you could not fail? A lot of people don't understand that in the beginning. I says, oh yeah, I would do this little thing or that little thing. No, wait at least 24 hours before you decide, because I guarantee you don't know how to think big enough. Because it should be so big that it scares you, because it should be able to better the life of a lot of other people together with yourself. That's the one that the universe is looking for. And when you think of something huge like that, that doesn't mean that you have to do it in one whack. I'm still wondering what a whack is. But no, decide on something that is big enough for you to do the rest of your life, maybe. And then know that you don't have to know everything to start it out, and you don't have to do it all at once. You break it up in different sections, and you say, well, I do this first, and then that second, and then third and fourth, and then by the time I get to number 18 on my list, I got it done. So the first thing that you may want to do is to learn something new. You may need to study some of the things from the people that is already doing what you want to do. And you need to figure out, who do I want to do this with? Where do I want to do it? How? These are all details that you need to figure out in order to get to that final goal that you thought of. And that's what successful people are good at doing this. They break it up into sections. They have the big picture in their mind, and now they start working on the individual small sections as they come in sequence. Because when you do that, you are not intimidated by the big picture. And what another thing that the super successful people talk about is that get away from this concept of trading time for money. If you do that, what happens when you get sick? If you work for someone else and you get sick, you can't work anymore, there goes the income stream. That's why multi-level marketing is so powerful. Not just in the income stream, but also in tax advantages if you pay those things. Because let's say you have an office at home, you can write off a quarter of your house payment. You can write off your car. Put a sign on the side of the car and you write off the whole thing, everything you do with the car, and you get tax advantages from it. So there is phenomenal, even a small part-time business to start out. That is sometimes where it starts. And when you talk about that big thing that you thought of, come and join us in the mastermind, because we can show you how to do that. Because remember what the mastermind definition is? That's when two or more minds are united in harmony, they create a third mind that has the potential mind power of the two or more of them multiplied by each other. If 1,000 people get together, concentrate on one thing, visualize it, intend for it, now you got the mind power of 1,000 times 1,000. That's 1,000,000 minds that is focusing on that thing. It's not just thoughts anymore. Now it is a creative energy that is directed towards that thing you were thinking of. So this is something to think about. And I forgot to look at the watch here when I started, so you have to keep track of that there, Ahonu.
No problem. Yeah.
I'll do that. And I actually wrote down some notes here that there's too much that I don't want to forget anything. Remember that you should study successful people, especially the ones that is in the arena where you want to be. Study them, watch their videos, read their speeches, read their books. Now you are associating with them. You learn from them and you grow with them. And also, don't expect super successful people to be predictable. They always think out of the box, and they are totally unpredictable because they are the leaders. They are the visionaries. And they see things you don't see. normal thinking people are not thinking it that. I said normal thinking people. I don't mean that as a derogatory word. That is the masses. Masses of people. They don't think in this higher conscious thinking mode. The I played three-dimensional chess. That is something that you should try sometime.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, there is.
What is that?
You got two floors. You play the bottom floor. You don't know who the king is before you get on the top of the floor. You got to kill off everybody on the lower floor first, and then you find out what's up there. So yeah, it is. It's a little interesting.
Yeah.
And I also, most super successful people, I learned this from Warren. I keep a tape recorder with a voice recording device. Whenever I walk around or wherever if I come up with a brilliant idea of something, I was supposed to call so-and-so and I forgot. I push the red button that says call so-and-so. Or if I get a good idea, I push the red button and I talk for about 20 seconds, explain what my good idea is, leave it alone. Then in the evening or maybe the day after, I run the recording and I write it down. I have a telephone log where everything I do goes into that telephone log. So I can go back. Well, let's say I think, oh, that's right. So-and-so was doing this thing and that sounded interesting. I should talk to him. So you go back in your telephone log, you find a phone number and you call him and you have a nice talk about things.
Yeah.
Keep a telephone log.
Yeah.
You're going to be better for it.
Aage, about the voice recorder, that's something that we have recommended to our authors as well. As you know, we've published over 1,000 books, and it's one of the things that we answer. People raise the question all the time, how do I get these ideas out of my head and onto paper? And that's what we say to them. You just simply pick up your recorder, you speak into it. And nowadays, as you know, it's a simple thing to get that transcribed. I mean, Google Voice, any of them. There's a countless websites there that will simply transcribe your voice into the word if that's what you want. But I see you're using it in terms of reminders and getting ideas down and so on, and that's brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of a must because we're walking computers, but if you look at your screen, you don't see all the files in there. You gotta bring them up. Here too, our brain, we don't remember everything. We gotta bring it up, and this is the kind of like a reminder of what to bring up. So
yes,
yeah. And also there's something that I've been saying for a long time, that if we don't have good health, if you're sick all the time, you really don't have anything. It's a miserable life. I've done a lot of videos on Broadcast Team Alpha about health. I also in my book here about spiritual science. There we go. Spiritual science, higher conscious thinking, and how to access the universal consciousness. I show and I talk about how to reverse the aging process. Now, remember, the body is a self-correcting machine. If you give it what it needs, all the raw material that the body needs, it will do that. In addition to, it will also reverse the aging process or stop the aging process if you give it what it needs. And I like to show you some of the things that I do in order to replenish my body. I am 78 years old. You don't see much gray hair.
Oh, indeed.
And
you look great for 78.
I don't use pharmaceuticals. but I give the body what it needs. And here I'm going to show you some of the stuff that I do. I have, oh boy, oh boy. I take something called Tangy Tangerine that is put out by Dr. Wallach. Everybody knows Dr. Wallach. He's been around since about 3 weeks before the beginning of time. And he has some phenomenal products. And this is what I do every day. I take 2 scoops of this every day. And another thing, when I talked about gray hair has nothing to do with aging. It has to do with a deficiency in the body. Stress will help you create that deficiency because you sweat more and you lose more minerals. The graying hair is usually a function of an acidic body and a copper deficiency. That's why I take ionic copper. And also iodine. That is an absolute must for me to take every day. And also to keep the resistance to disease up. I take these two, D3 and zinc. It's also very good for, I don't know if we could mention it or not, but that's something that lesser knowledgeable people put in their arm here a couple of years ago. That's it's very good for that too. And
Good.
also, I take here we go, boron. Why would I do that? Well, it helps to clean out the pituitary gland, which is your gate and your transmitting antenna out of the brain to the universal mind, where all and everything is. It increases your intuition or psychic abilities. I prefer use that last name, but that people don't understand. And also, it helps. See, the pituitary gland is a chemical factory also. It helps to create the chemicals that supports the running of your body, your heart, and your brain, and your mind. That's why I take it. And here is another thing. I take selenium. That is an absolute must to keep a strong heart. And then again, I keep all of these bottles on my desk. Hemp seed oil. I take a slug 2 or 3 times a day on this. And I want to say something about I forgot to say about ionic copper. It helps to strengthen muscle tissue and make it flexible. Guess what? Your heart is a muscle. If the heart is not strong and have a very flexible muscle, it's going to tear, and it's called cardiomyopathy. People with white hair usually dies from cardiomyopathy. That's what I've been reading in some of the reports. So that's why I take ionic copper. And also an acidic body that will give you gray hair. That means straighten out your eating. Get away from the bonbon and then the acidic hamburgers and all. If you eat a lot of green leafy food over a period of a few months, you'll bring the body up to an alkaline state.
Mm-hmm.
I do whatever you can. There are ways to do that. Baking soda, I have a hard time getting it much above 7 because I eat chicken and stuff too. So, so I take, if it dips down to 7, I take baking soda and bring it up to about. So I try to keep it above 8 all the time. That's why I'm never sick.
What was the benefit of hemp seed oil, Aage?
Oh gosh, you can mention just about absolutely anything, and it will help in its in the furtherance of it.
Right.
It's kind of like marijuana. That'll cure just about anything too, according to some of the medical reports that it's been covered up for you.
Yes.
So anyway, that's what I. And
Mm.
then, for those of you that is up in age like me, oh boy, I can't see that at all. Astragalus.
Astragalus.
Astragalus, when taken in the large doses, will help the body to lengthen the telomeres at the end of the chromosomes inside every cell of your body, which will stop your aging process. Because science found out what causes aging, and there's really only one reason. Now, there's many contributors to that, smoking and a lot of alcohol and, lousy lifestyle. But there is one reason, and that is the shortening of the telomeres inside of your cells, that at the end of the chromosomes inside of your cells. For every time the cell replicates itself, that telomeres get shorter and shorter and shorter every time until there's nothing left. And then the end of the chromosome starts fraying and the cell can no longer replicate itself. So now can't replicate itself means you get stuck with old cells in the body and you get all wrinkled up and you get old and gray and all the rest of it that we seem to happen around us, and you die. There is another one. This is Jiaogolin powder, Jiaogolin herb. That is called the immortality herb in China. Oh, this is not working too well. But
No, can't see it.
anyway, it's Jiaogolin, Jiaogulin, for those that doesn't speak Chinese. That's me.
Okay.
So this is what I do. And of course, I'm not a doctor. I can't give you advice. This is what I do. You figure out what you can do. But if you go to Lancet or New England Journal of Medicine and start looking into the natural studies, you're going to find some of these things. But they're not published. Doctors don't even know anything about it.
Mm-hmm. So am I right, Aage, when you focus on health now, and you have said you're not a doctor and you're not prescribing, you're simply saying what you do, right? And am I right in hearing that you do this because this is part of that billionaire mindset? In other words, if your body is clear and not acidic and it's healthy, then longevity and excitement and future and all of that business and income and adventure and all of that follows. Is that more or less what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I take a lot more stuff than what I showed you.
Right.
I take so many capsules and stuff that when I take it in the morning, it almost feels like a light lunch. But
Wow.
but I also know 2 billionaires that told me that they take a lot of supplements. And now there's a brain pill that has come out that Warren Buffett, I saw him on a video actually recently, talked about it, that he's taking this brain pill that increases his sharpness of the mind, and it's out there. I haven't tried it, so I shouldn't really talk about it.
Right.
I may someday, but that's it's working. Is from what I hear.
Good.
And all of this, remember, we live in a mind-created universe, as quantum mechanics is showing us. And we need to be thankful for all of this, thankful for what we have, and feel the gratitude and be appreciative and thank every day. Thank the universe or God or whoever you see as being the supreme being up there, hopefully up there and not down there. Uh, but be thankful for what you have. And when they go home, they disconnect from work, except for emergencies that they maybe need to deal with, because you need the time away to recharge for the work part of it. That's one thing that I've never been very good at. And I know I'm doing something right, because being
Yes.
78 and doing what I do, I work at least 12 hours a day. But then again, I do a lot of sitting around working on the computer. But I get sunshine in the morning for a period of time, and I do exercise. I do the Tibetan rites. If you
Excellent.
research that,
Mm.
I know Ahonu, he knows about it.
I
So,
do that too.
oh, wonderful, wonderful.
Mhm.
Yeah. Now, the only thing about the Tibetan rites is that it doesn't build a lot of muscle, but it keeps the body sharp, limber, and working. And also has, when it is combined with a mind exercise that I learned in the martial arts, it also helps to slow down the aging process. And they spend quality time with family. Quality more so than quantity. Remember that, because quantity can be anything, but you can have a short moment of a deep, loving conversation with your partner that could outweigh hours of sitting in a car going somewhere thinking about your own things and just being physically next to someone. And another thing is that try to get your work done in 8 hours. I have never been very good at that. But the reason I am not very good at that is because I love what I do. I just can't get enough of it. I do videos, I do interviews, I create in my mind, and I put it on the internet. When you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. Remember that.
Now, that's a very important point, and I come across that all the time, Aage. Indeed, Angel Rose sometimes says to me, can you do something else besides, working on the computer? Like you, we're making videos, we're helping people, we're helping others realize their dreams. And my answer always is, I'm not working.
Yeah, I know.
It's not work.
Yeah.
It's just pure pleasure. And that's a key distinction. You are absolutely right to focus on that. And I think also, when you mentioned about millionaires and billionaires, that's perhaps the way they see their lives also, is that they're not working. They're just creating.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's an interesting distinction.
Yeah. They love what they do.
That's what they do. Yeah.
Yeah. And they love creation. Just like you said, look at Musk. I mean, he spent $5 billion in Texas building a car factory.
Yeah.
He didn't have to do it himself. He just paid for the ball. He found competent people that is sharper than him to do the work. Because he couldn't go out there and do it all by himself. There's no chance of that. So no, that's one of the things they learn how to do. They know how to delegate. In the past, I was never very good at that either. And now Nori and I do the Broadcast Team Alpha show, and we overlap really good. We do delegate because she puts color to what I talk about. She's brilliant, so that's why we're partners. Anyway, now in the beginning, when you start a business, the 8 hours a day may not work. You may have to do a little more, but set a date for the time when you're going to back off, because when there's more than you doing it, you can always delegate, and make sure that you find competent people, and they will show their competence in a very short time after they get the position and the work to do. They will show their competence very quickly. So that is one of the things that they do. Also, plan to get enough sleep. When I was flying, there were one time for a period of time, I flew at night. And a lot of times when no other pilots would want to do things, I just went and did it. And I flew all night and then got back in the morning. And then I worked the next day around the clock again. Now, like I was a pilot, and we had a flight school, an international air taxi, and an air carrier. And I did what I should now advise people not to do. I didn't get enough sleep. And another thing is that if you have a family, spend quality time with them. I never learned how to do that. I was always working, and I was never home when they needed me, so it cost me my family. Don't make that mistake. Spend time with your family, quality time. I'm talking from experience. And like I mentioned before, study the people that you want to be like. Watch their videos, read their speeches, read their books. And also, the success of tomorrow starts tonight. When you know what you're going to do tomorrow, sit down, or especially when you lay down to go to sleep, think through what you're going to do. If you have someone really important for what you're doing, you got to have a conversation with him on the phone, let's say. Go through an imaginary phone call the night before as you're falling asleep. Tell him what you need to have done and what you want to accomplish, and then listen to him answer, yes, let's do this thing, or something similar. So when tomorrow you're making that call, you already done it. You know what's going to happen. Play in your mind. So all you're doing is to replaying the movie the next day, because now you have already created it. You put it into the universal mind. It's sitting there as potential for physical creation later, according to quantum mechanics. And the next day you import it and you execute it, expecting it to be as you planned it. Does that make any sense?
It does, absolutely, yeah.
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 And
when you mentioned in the first segment about Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, he speaks about that a lot. And I remember as growing up reading that book, and I was enamored at the idea that you could just think about something in that way and expect it to happen.
Yep.
Now, I've always found that that is exactly what happens. Your expectations happen. Now, if you don't mind, let me spend just a moment to tell you my own personal experience, Aage, because you wouldn't have known this, and perhaps a lot of our listeners and viewers wouldn't have known this either. But my first baby died, and you're talking about family, right? After a lot of months, even after a few years, I could not understand fully why. What was death all about? Where was he? Why did it happen to me? What did I do to deserve this? You know, all those kinds of questions. And of course, going through all the phases of grief, all of that. But the one big thing I deduced out of all of it after a number of years was what I was feeling the most was the loss of expectation. Now, that's a hard one to grasp, but when you have a child, you are full of expectation for the future.
Yeah.
And in the same way, when you're talking about starting a business, you're full of expectation for the future, or you're talking about speaking with somebody tomorrow about a sales call or whatever it is, you're full of expectation. And that is a good thing. But in my case, when death interferes, what happens is that expectation is cut short and the whole creative process stops. And that is what I think grief is. And that's what really tears into your heart. But that's why I understand completely what you're saying and how important it is that you can expect to receive your highest heroic outcome if you do that, if you do create your expectations.
Yeah. Yeah. When you have expectation, that means that you know something. So knowing it in your heart and believing it, that creates expectation. So if we have doubt in something, either in ourselves or in the subject or object we're trying to create, look at it from a different angle so you get a different perspective of it. Maybe you understand it and will believe it better. Because once you have you got to believe it. If you have doubt in, yeah, that probably won't work, but I'll try it anyway. Forget it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. The universe doesn't support wishy-washy.
No. No. And that's another thing to really successful people. They work out affirmations that they keep saying to themselves over and over and over and over and over and over again every day. These affirmations can be absolutely anything in regard and directed to what you want to accomplish or be or do or have. Make up affirmation. I have some of them stuck little stickies that I put on top of the computer screen. The thing about what you put on the computer screen is that you don't look at it all the time. But guess who's looking at it all the time? Your subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind believes everything it is told. And it rearranges the neural network to support what it believes. So this is a little. And also another thing that they have learned, and salespeople know all about this, and that is that when you want someone else to do something, and they say, no, I don't want to do that. Ask them differently. Tell them something in support of what you were saying, and then ask them again from a different angle. And they said, gee, they might tell you that, I still don't think that'll work. Then ask again. Ask 3 times before you give up. Salespeople know this. There's something about the 3rd time. I've talked to, well, I don't know, not that many, but probably a couple of 3 salespeople. And I asked them, What is the difference between, or is there a difference between someone, these salespeople now, you ask them to buy something the first time and then they say no. By the time you got them to ask them 3 times, how many of those people have come around to the fact that, yeah, maybe I'll get this after all? The third time, an awful big percentage buy it after the third time, not just the first one. So remember that. If you are in business, or you like to be in business, or just a good running family, that is success. That's the success I'm talking about. That's what they talk about. Behind every successful man, there is a strong woman. Behind every successful woman, there is a supporting husband. Or not necessarily husband, but partner. Or someone that is supportive. If you're a single guy out there, you got a tough going. Find someone that resonates with what you're doing. It doesn't have to be a partner or a wife, but someone that you can, whenever you have a question, you can lean on them. Do you remember the inner circle that I talked about last time? That inner circle can be that person, because that inner circle has people in it with knowledge that you don't have. That's why you have an inner circle, because you can go to those people and find the information you need for a specific purpose. So, and this, I talked last time about going within, asking questions. And a good time to do that is right at the time when you fall asleep at night, in the evening, or whenever you fall asleep. When your mind starts closing down, your brainwave patterns are slowing down. They're coming down into the alpha range and go down into theta. When you fall asleep, your brainwave pattern is in theta. And I put together some endless loop recordings. They're on Broadcast Team Alpha, and you can have access to those recordings if you are joining in with us on the Mastermind, which I'll invite you to in a second. When you are sleeping, your brainwave pattern is down in the theta, which is the same brainwave pattern that a good hypnotist will get you to when he reprogrammed the subconscious mind for success, or getting rid of bad habits, quit smoking or whatever. And when you're down there and listen to these endless loop recordings, you get the benefit of similar procedure as hypnosis, as well as you are already in theta while you sleep, because obviously your conscious mind is not in the way, it's not involved at all, you're sleeping. And that is why it's so effective. I used this in flight school, and I think I told a lot of people about that. That's why these endless loop recordings can reprogram the subconscious mind to whatever you want it to do and be and have. Yes, also have. Because when you program the subconscious mind, let's say that you got a car that is 18 years old and it's on its last leg, should I say last tire, and you need a new one. Start programming for the new one while you are in theta, because that message goes into the universal mind and there it sits. Now you gotta know what it looks like, you know what brand, you know color, and see yourself sitting in it, smell it, feel it when you put it into that universal mind. Now it's sitting there, and you can go bring it back from there. That's what we do in the mastermind sessions. And that's what we do also. We program the future. We create the future in our mind. So when the future comes, we get to enjoy it again the second time, because we have already know what it looked like. Let's say that you something that you want to have happen, let's say at Christmas. You create it in your mind, place it at that Christmas party, go back and forth and visit it every day. And when that Christmas party comes, most likely you will just walk into it, usually before, but you will be there, you'll have it, you do it, you be it. You have accomplished it. See yourself standing around toasting the success with friends. This is another thing that we are very good at explaining in here. I talk about universal success principle and how billionaires think. Gosh, I'm pretty transparent today, aren't I?
Yes, universal success
there
principle.
we go. There we go. It is something that if people do this, and I should also probably tell you how you can get your hands on this book. It is in a catalog called Tools for Freedom. You should call them, ask them to send you a free catalog. And if you need, if you want to order the book, you go to toolsforfreedom.com. You can do it there, or better yet, call them on an 800 number that is 1-800-770-8802. Because this catalog has thousands of things that we need when it comes to health and emergency preparedness, love, natural cures. There's a lot of good stuff in here that we really need to know about.
Good, 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 good.
Yeah, and here, this one here, of course, I teach you how to use your mind in ways that you normally would think would be impossible. And that's why this is a book that is selling a lot of books 9 years after it was written. That is kind of unheard of.
Excellent. Yeah, yeah. That's good. We'll put links to those down below for our people. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And when you program the future, like I just mentioned, you know what's going to happen because you believe it, and as yourself, you expect it. Sitting out there, you created it already. It's sitting in that universal mind. Of course, I'm pointing out there, but it is in here. But still, it is there in the universal mind. So you are bringing it forward into the physical existence with you. Now, towards the end here, I've wanted to talk about, and I know some of you out there listening to this, you've been waiting to find out, how do you protect a business? So if somebody sues you and you lose, they still can't collect anything. I think I mentioned that.
You did briefly, yes.
Yeah, and I'll try to make it as short as I can because it's really fairly simple in concept. Why do you think all lawyers' offices is structured under an LLP? It's because there's more protection there. Lawyers get sued all the time, but nothing happens. Why would that be? because there's more protection in an LLP and an LLC, if it's done right, than a corporation. No lawyer is stupid enough to have a corporation. Now, I paused on purpose here because I want you to think, why do you think lawyers don't have corporations? Because there is no protection anymore. You can go right through a corporation now and you take everything that is in the corporation. In fact, you can take the property of the owner of that corporation. There also is court cases now that show that they go and attach the shareholders of the corporation. Maybe that's why the lawyers are not stupid enough to have a corporation. If I set up a business, I would set it up in an LLC first. And that's the one that would deal with the public. So you are out there, everything looks proper. You can also set it up so that your social security number is not attached to the LLC. And within the LLC, there is some language that you can put in there because the federal law, and you have to use federal law on this, and you can. I know the lawyers are going to say, oh, you're in Arizona, you're in LLC in Arizona. You can't, that you're covered by Arizona law. Yeah, but you can invoke the federal jurisdiction. I can talk on this because I've been a paralegal for 30 years almost. It's not legal advice. I'm just telling you what I would do. There's language you can put into that LLC that will stop all lawsuits pretty much. And that is that federal law and court cases support the fact that it is up to the manager of the LLC to decide whether they should do distributions of funds from the LLC at the end of the year or whenever it is decided to do. How is that important? That is that federal law and the statutes and the court cases show that when an LLC gets sued, they can only collect from the distribution of the LLC to the shareholders or the owner. So let's say that you get sued and you lose the case. You owe $44,000. Okay. Now, this is going to put a smile on your face because you decide if there are going to be any distribution from that LLC, which they could collect. They could take every dime of it. But the manager can decide that, no, we're not going to distribute any money to the partners this year. So they can't collect anything. Oh boy, that means that you can't live if you have money coming from that. That's going to be a tough one, right? Maybe not. What if you borrow money from the LLC? Borrowing money is not your money. That has to be repaid. You can borrow money from the LLC. Now you got something to live on again. And this is what I would do. And then you make let's say, a payment back to the LLC every 6 months on that borrowed money, or every month, whatever you decide. Now you have blocked the suitor, and you're still able to live from the LLC. Let's say that you have equipment, computers, cars, and stuff that you use for your business or whatever, a house maybe. Hold, set up a trust behind the LLC and make that a trust, a trust set. Here's federal court cases saying that all statute has to be put forth in the spirit of the common law. Now, attorneys won't tell you that because they cannot go into the common law, then they'll lose their bar license, and they're not going to do it. But you can do it. And it will stand in the courts if it is challenged. So put everything in trust behind the LLC. So if the LLC gets sued after, let me back up on that one. When the money comes into the LLC, one day, transfer it right out of there, the next day into the trust bank account behind it. So if the LLC gets sued, there's nothing in it. If, of course, if there is a suit, then from there on, you got to borrow the money. So this is something that I know there are people doing it, and it works very well.
So in the same way earlier, Aage, when you were talking about the being healthy, and it wasn't health advice. This is not legal advice either, but it's from your own experience. Now, we do have a lot of experience from what you're saying too, but in different jurisdictions. But the principles remain the same. And there are ways of protecting yourself in all kinds of ways. And they're brilliant, but they're hidden from us in the same way as a lot of common sense things are hidden from us, so as to make us vulnerable and be good little pawns, good little citizens. And so you're pointing out a few of these little what would you call them, gems of wisdom, I suppose you could call them, that everybody should look into, because they are common law, they are common sense actually in lots of different ways too. So they should certainly look into them. Yeah. And to relate this back to your main subject about how billionaires think, this is how they think. They're constantly thinking how to maximize their income, how to maximize their money, how to keep what they have all the time, rather than pay it out unnecessarily to frivolous claims of one kind or another. So that's wonderful. Yeah. Was there more you want to say on that?
Yes, there is. And that is, remember Rockefeller?
Mm-hmm.
Own nothing and control everything.
Yes.
So we gotta listen to that. I also, let's see, what should I say? Yes, that trust behind the LLC that holds all the valuables has to be a trust set up in private contract. Set it up as a private contract. Then you get the protection of Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution of the United States, which says that no government can interfere in private contract. If an attorney sues you, well, he's a private guy. But if the court come at you, the court is government. That suit cannot be taken into the court. How can they collect if you can't, an attorney collect unless they can run it through a court? It's going to be a little difficult.
Yeah.
So that's something that you could think about. Now, I just wanted to say one thing also about foreclosures. Foreclosures are fairly simple to stop. I didn't say easy because it takes some new thinking on your part. And that takes a little study. I'll tell you a little bit of that study that you can start with. Let me ask you this. I ask the listeners, when you go to the bank and borrow money, how many of you think that you're actually getting money that the bank give you? Put your hand up. I can't see you, but you do. You can see you. And those of you that struck your hand up and say that you think you get money from the bank, you're all wrong. When you go to the bank on bended knee and ask to borrow money, they will ask you to sign two papers. One is a contract and the other one is a promissory note. Sometimes it is just a promissory note, but it's a contract with credit cards and stuff. But what happens when you get the money? They take your promissory note, turn it over, stamp it on the back, pay to the order of, and then an account number, which they establish a new account in your name. So they take the promissory note and deposit that promissory note into your bank account so you can draw on it. With other words, they took the promissory note and put in that you created your own money and they put it in the bank account. They gave you nothing. That's a tough one to believe. There is a publication put out by the Federal Reserve. Oh, where did I go? Modern Money Mechanics. You can find this, they don't print it anymore, but you can find it. I'm going to read something on page 6 of this publication. They say it's the Federal Reserve issuing this pamphlet. And it's going to prove what I say, that the whole concept of borrowing money from a bank is a scam. It says, however, well, it's on page 6. And then when you ask, let's say, to borrow $10,000 from the bank, however, they are not required to keep the $10,000 in reserve or against a $10,000 deposit. All they need to retain is 10% reserve requirement, which, in other words, they can go out and spend the rest of it on salaries and investments. And then they retain $1,000 as a reserve. Actually, it's less than that. It's about $3,000. The remaining $9,000 is excess reserves. This amount can be loaned or invested. But here comes the good one. If business is active, the banks with the excess reserve probably will have opportunity to loan out $9,000. Of course, they do not really pay out loan from the money they receive as deposits. What they do when they make loans is to accept promissory notes in exchange for credit to the borrower's transaction account. It says right there. Loans or assets and deposits or liabilities both rise by $9,000. So the value of the bank rise by $9,000. So the bank can go out and borrow money with that $9,000 as a collateral. But the deposit credited constitute new additional funds that as deposit to the banking system. They take your promissory note and make it into what we call money, deposit that into your bank account, and then you go out and use that money to pay off a house or something. Now, this can be proven, and they don't want this to end up in the court system so people find out.
Is that published by the Federal Reserve?
Yes.
Yeah.
It says right at the bottom, the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago is the one that put out this pamphlet. And the title of the pamphlet is Modern Money Mechanics. You can Google it, and you can find the writing in there on the internet. And also, I believe there's several states that had court cases rise to the level of their Supreme Court, saying that most foreclosures were illegal, because if the bank doesn't have the original contract and promissory note in their possession, they got nothing. They can't sue.
Right.
They have no standing.
And in lots of cases, they've already sold it on to other institutions.
Yes. And the Chinese are pissed because they're holding most of this worthless notes.
Right. Yes, yes, yes. That is a whole area that needs competence in study.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with it, Aage, at all. Absolutely not. We studied this many years ago as part of a kind of a sovereignty movement. I remember in Ireland at the time, and it was very valid. Now the thing was, whenever anybody took what they learnt into the court system would trip them up very easily,
Yeah.
because they weren't learned enough. There was tricks that they needed to know how to say something correctly and what not to say, and so on. And I'm just saying that just to warn people that you are indeed right in what you say, but do take the time to study it, because when you go into the lion's den, you need to know how the lion operates, and what to say and what not to say.
Yeah. And I developed a little dialogue with the bank. Once you cross in the bar into the court system, you're in their territory. Yeah.
Yes.
You're in the lion's den.
Yeah.
And I developed a little bit of a dialogue there to wrap the judge up so he cannot do a thing, by getting him to admit that he is there as an independent arbitrator. And there's some language to this that is, and you mentioned the sovereignty, and that is why I carry an international passport, not the US passport. So there is, and I have my sovereignty process as part of, printed into this international passport. Now, if somebody is interested, I can tell them later on how to do that.
Yes, I'm sure there would be interest in that for sure.
Yeah. But we have covered a lot here, and this is something also that if you go to broadcastteamalpha.com and scroll down into the videos, you'll find I did a 53-minute video on how to reverse the aging process, as well as I show you in the book that I showed you here,
Yes.
Spiritual Science, on how to do that. This is something that will maintain your health. If you don't have your good health, you got nothing.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Being 78 years old, more than half of the people in this country, they're on 7 to 10 different pharmaceuticals by now. Some of them are bald and walk on walkers.
Oh, it's big business.
Yeah, and I don't care how old you are.
Yeah.
If you do the right thing, which Nori and I talk about a lot on our shows, in 1 year, you could be as healthy as I am now. That is my perception of what can happen if you do the right thing.
Yes. One quick story before, because I want to go into a little summary of what you've covered today,
Yeah.
Aage, is I used to work in technical support. And one of the jobs I had many years ago was technical support for Pfizer Pharmaceuticals. Now, innocently, this is way before COVID, and I had no idea of what they did in terms of a corporation. But as far as I was concerned, I was doing technical support. Indeed, I actually carried Pfizer Ireland through the Y2K period as technical support. Anyway, aside from that, one day I got a call to say, can you go into Pfizer Bank because they're having some problem in there? And I said, Pfizer Bank? I never heard of it. What the hell's Pfizer Bank? Turns out that in Dublin, in the financial district, there is a division of Pfizer called Pfizer Bank. It's not publicized, it's not advertised. Very few people know about it, but that's where they hold and invest all their pharmaceutical profits. So when I went in there, I was astonished at the wealth of the place. It was staggering. It was astonishing. And what I realized in that moment was that all of what I was doing on the front end was all a facade. There was a whole bunch of stuff going on in the background that nobody knows about. And that really woke me up and opened my eyes. So let's summarize what we've covered, because we've covered a lot, as you said, Aage. And you mentioned in the beginning that when you have a project of any kind, that if you break it up, if you break up a big project or a big ambition into smaller sections and then even into sequences, that then you're not intimidated by the big picture of it all. And it makes it all so much more achievable and attainable.
Yeah. How do you eat an elephant, right? One
Right.
bite at a time.
One bite at a time. You can write off a lot of stuff if you know how to do it. That does take a little bit of study, but you need to be aware of it. You should study and watch successful people's videos and read their books. You said that never expect successful people to be predictable. I thought that was interesting too.
Yeah.
And right. Carry a voice recorder. We spoke at length about that, how it's invaluable to quickly record those ideas and anything that you downstep, whether it's for you writing a book, as I mentioned, or whether it's ideas that you have for starting a business or helping others in some other way. Then you spoke at length about good health, and the body is a self-correcting mechanism. If you give it what it needs, and that it can reverse the aging process. You mentioned a whole bunch of products that I tried to write down, and hopefully I've got them right. The first one you mentioned was from Dr. Wallach, Tangerine, I think it was called, and that gray hair was a deficiency of minerals in the body, which was coming from an acidic body and lack of copper. So you suggested ionic copper, which strengthens the muscles, and you also suggested iodine, and that gives you a resistance to disease. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, because I was trying to write as quickly as you were speaking. You said you also take D3 and zinc. Yeah,
yes.
go ahead.
There's one thing on the copper. It must be ionic copper, because that particles is so small, he makes it into the cell. Colloidal copper is worthless almost, and I discovered that. And because the particle is too big, it doesn't make it into the cell.
Good point. Good point. Ionic copper. You mentioned then also about boron, because that helps to clean out the pituitary gland and increase intuition and psychic ability. And that was a good point. Selenium also contributes to supporting a strong heart. And hemp seed oil. I'm sure there's a lot more to learn about that, but that was for general good health.
Yeah, I buy it by the case.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Good. Astragalus, you spoke about helping the body to lengthen the chromosomes in the cells to stop aging. I'm sure
the telomere. The telomeres, yeah.
The telomeres. Jiaogolin for longevity, Chinese herb, right?
Mhm.
And then you mentioned about the processes where going to sleep, feel the gratitude every day, feel thankful for what you have. And when you do go home from work, disconnect from it completely and get some sun and exercise. Spend quality time with your family and try to get your work done in 8 hours. But then we spoke a little bit about that too, that if you love your work, it's not, we don't classify it as work, that you can enjoy it very much too.
I haven't
Delegate.
I haven't worked for a long time.
No, nor I. I know it's an interesting thing. Delegate and plan to get enough sleep. That's excellent advice. Success tomorrow starts today. Now, that was a pretty strong statement and very valid. We spoke about expectation and not to doubt, because not doubting is what creates success. In other words, the high expectation all the time. You spoke about affirmations to be, do, or have. So your subconscious mind creates what it believes. And then in sales, and I know this to be right because I have been in sales myself many, many years ago. But in sales, you said, ask 3 times before you move on, because in the third time, usually people realize that what you're saying is helpful to them. Behind every successful, now you did say man at the time, but what I wrote was, behind every successful person is a supportive other.
There you go.
You did explain it far better than that, but I condensed it down into that one sentence.
Good.
Go within. Go within, you said, which something, excuse me. Sorry. You recommended getting endless loop recordings and to connect with you and your website, which I'll ask you for when we come to the close, Aage, please, so that they can get them free to reprogram their subconscious mind.
Yeah, on that note, if you want to come and have a look at the mastermind we have put together, send us an email to themastermindconnection@gmail.com. themastermindconnection@gmail.com, and I'll send you information and a link so you can come and have a look.
Excellent. Great.
We have phenomenal success stories of healings, people going into business for themselves and now extremely successful. These things happen when you combine the minds of all and everybody on our mastermind and focus.
Excellent. You said that we create the future in our minds. So when it comes, we can enjoy it for the second time.
Yeah.
Because we've already created it. You spoke about that catalog, Tools for Freedom, and you gave the telephone number for that, 1-800-770-8802. In terms of business, sorry, let me take a drink here for a moment. I've been talking too much. You then branched into speaking about business and protecting your business and so on, and about using LLP, which was more secure and gave more protection than an LLC or a corporation. And you made a statement, you said, no lawyer is stupid enough to have a corporation. Pretty strong statement, but very valid indeed.
Yeah, I would say though, an LLP is something that I have not studied, because I'm able to do everything the same of what I need with an LLC with more protection.
All right, gotcha,
But
yeah.
the LLP, I think, is under a different section of the law, which only applies to professionals. And a lot of us are not professional. I'm not a professional at anything. So that's why I'll probably stay with an LLC.
Okay, gotcha. That's good. I'm glad you clarified that. You can invoke federal law to protect your business, and you can borrow from your LLC so that it is not a distribution, and in that way protect yourself from having to pay out for frivolous lawsuits and so on. You suggested the last time too, in the last segment, and now again, to set up a trust behind your LLC and set it up as a private contract. And that is good advice too, because common law stands in court. And then you also mentioned that great statement from, who was it again? Own nothing and control everything. Who was it said that?
Rockefeller.
Rockefeller.
Old man Rockefeller.
Brilliant. Own nothing and control everything. You then introduced that pamphlet, Modern Money Mechanics, which was published by the Federal Reserve, that the whole concept of borrowing and the whole concept of borrowing money from banks is a scam, you said. The judge also is an independent arbitrator. That was something that you set out to do in court successfully. And then finally, you spoke about the fact that you have an international passport, and that if anybody wanted to find out more information about that, they can contact you directly. So do give your contact details again, Aage.
Yeah. Yep. And what else should we talk about? I think that's probably...
Well, yeah, that's probably it for today, but do introduce what we're going to speak about next week with Nori.
Yeah, that Nori Love, she is my co-host on Broadcast Team Alpha, and also she's the co-creator of the Mastermind, and we get together on Sundays and Mondays and Wednesdays in the evening, Sundays at 2 o'clock East Coast time, and that's when we do the well, I'm joking about this, but the mind melt like the like Spock used to do. But no, we create a mastermind where we all are coming, join our mind frequencies, and they create a bubble of intention, visualized images, love, and all the other things that carries with it into the universal mind, and we place it there, and then we go bring it back. We have had goofy things happen, like mailbox money. People, they need something really bad, and then 3 or 4 days later, they find an envelope in the mailbox with cash in it. Or
excellent.
The one lady, she needed $400 to repair her car because something broke, and she just went through a box one day, found an envelope with $400 in it. She hadn't been in that box for years.
Excellent. Yes.
Now, how can you explain stuff like that without waddling into quantum mechanics?
Right. Yes. This is the creative universe that we're in.
Yeah.
Okay, Aage, listen, it's a pleasure as always speaking with you. We look forward to speaking with Nori next week. And thanks again for all your vast knowledge, your information. And we will put it out on our podcast on podcast.worldofempowerment.com. You'll find it on worldofempowerment.com. You'll also find it on our YouTube channels and our social media. So thanks again, Aage. We appreciate all you've done to help people. Take care. Till next time.
Well, thank you for having me.
Bye-bye.
You can subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and on our website at worldofempowerment.com.
Don't miss an episode. Hit the subscribe button now.